Hello health champions. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 foods that have been shut down or are about to be restricted by RFK. And finally, after having talked about these issues for decades about how food isn't food anymore and how we're being poisoned from the inside, finally there is a US Secretary of Health for the first time ever who agrees more with actual practitioners of health rather than the mainstream medical establishment. And with health practitioners, I mean those who help people get healthy, like chiropractors, like naturopaths, like people in functional medicine, and also those few wonderful heretics of the medical profession, the medical doctors who have gone against the mainstream of their profession because it doesn't work. And now finally, we have a US Secretary of Health who speak the language that we do. The first thing he's trying to get rid of is a bunch of artificial colors, such as red 3, red number 40, yellow number 5, and blue number 1. And these have been already banned in many countries, or even most countries around the world, because it's well recognized how dangerous they are and how much harm they do. They're strongly linked to hyperactivity, especially in kids, to behavioral issues, and also to allergies. And it causes thyroid cancer in rats, and that's why red number 3 has been banned from cosmetics. So get this, the FDA has a clause called the Delaney Clause that prohibits, that outlaws any additive that is known to cause cancer. So now you can't put it on your skin since 1990, but you can still eat it. But now, since many manufacturers are anticipating that it will be outlawed, now very quickly they can start reformulating and get rid of it. So what that's telling us is that this stuff is not hard to get rid of. It's just a matter of wanting to. It's not expensive, it's not difficult, it's just lazy, and if they don't have an incentive and if nobody tells them what's healthy or not, then they're just going to do whatever they've been doing. Number 2 is Kennedy wants to get rid of SNAP junk food, and SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. And here Kennedy says that tax-funded programs should promote health, not disease. What a concept. We shouldn't pay for people to get sick. So he wants to stop soda, candy, and ultra-processed foods from any government program because it is known, very well known, that sugar causes obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease, and doesn't only cause it, but it does so especially in low-income communities. So if we use tax funds to pay for junk food for people with food stamps, now they're going to get sick, and then we get to pay for it again with their medical bills. But now, of course, the critics call it paternalistic, and it says that this unfairly targets the poor. And I'm just curious, what's unfair about trying to keep someone healthy? Why should we pay for junk food? Should we pay for booze? Should we pay for cigarettes? Where do you draw the line to not call it unfair? I think it's totally obvious that tax funds should go toward keeping people healthy. But it just goes to show, in my opinion, that we have, as a country, as a society, and as an entire Western culture, we have absolutely no concept of what food is anymore. Number 3 is high fructose corn syrup. And Kennedy wants to discourage and reduce the use in schools and in government programs. So again, if we're using tax funds for this, then it shouldn't be to make people sicker. And high fructose corn syrup is very clearly one of the major problems with obesity and the metabolic disease pandemic that we see in the world today. But this issue becomes even more complicated now because of corn subsidies, because the entire industry of corn is subsidized. And as Kennedy points out, that makes corn artificially cheap. So junk food becomes artificially cheap. And on the counter side, we have, of course, the corn lobbyists and the big food companies who say that there will be massive profit implications. And I don't doubt that in any way, but that's not a reason that we don't have to do something about it. Item number 4 is about seed oil. So Kennedy wants to get rid of or restrict the use of canola, soybean, corn, sunflower, and safflower oil. And why is that? Because they are sky high. They are so rich in omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids, which promote inflammation and contribute to the obesity and metabolic disease epidemic. So the more of these omega-6 oils we use, the more we're going to see of obesity, insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and dementia. So Kennedy wants to remove these types of oils from school lunches. We shouldn't give these to the kids, but instead we should give them healthy fats. We should replace those with olive oil, with coconut oil, and with butter. I could hardly believe my ears when I saw that. I don't think it's less than 100 videos that I have talked about the healthy fats being extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, and butter. And here we hear it again from the US Secretary of Health. This is very, very hopeful. But of course, on that note, the mainstream nutrition so-called experts claim that the polyunsaturated fatty acids, the vegetable oils that have made us so sick that we've been eating since the 1960s, 70s now, they promote those and say that they are beneficial when replacing saturated fat. So again, they fall into the fallacy of throwing all sorts of fats on the bandwagon and saying that all saturated fats are bad, which of course is not true. The natural fats that we just talked about, coconut oil and butter, and even cooking oils from lard and tallow and goose fat, those are very, very stable when they come from a healthy source and we don't massively overheat them, then they are stable and safe and healthy fats. Food number 5 Kennedy wants to get rid of is ultra-processed foods out of the schools. So he thinks we should no longer serve these things to kids, things like frozen pizza, chicken nuggets, sugary cereals, chips, and shelf-stable desserts. And what makes something shelf-stable, that it can sit there on the shelf for months and months, of course, is sugar and seed oils and preservatives and additives. That's what makes it shelf-stable. And these foods are clearly linked to things like chronic inflammation, obesity, cognitive decline, and early mortality. And the state of Arizona has set as a goal to phase these out and get rid of them by 2026. And this, of course, is strongly endorsed by Kennedy. And instead of junk food, we should have a diet that's based on whole foods so that we can start reducing these chronic diseases that are now starting in childhood. And number 6 he wants to get rid of is artificial sweeteners. And if you have watched some of my videos in the past, you know that I always put these artificial sweeteners as some of the worst toxins ever. And they include aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, and acesulfame K, or acesulfame potassium. And we know that they're linked to potential carcinogenicity and that they disrupt both the metabolism and your biome. And today, unfortunately, we can find them in thousands or even tens of thousands of different foods, such as diet soda, chewing gum, yogurt, flavored water, meal bars, and even chewable kids' vitamins. So he wants to start with educational campaigns, even if there is no formal ban on these things yet. Number 7 is GRAS loophole reform, and GRAS stands for generally recognized as safe. And this dates back to 1958, when they felt that not everything should need to be tested and proven. Some things were just kind of self-evident, and they were referring to things like vinegar, salt, and baking soda that you shouldn't have to test. You should just generally recognize them as safe. But in the continuation of that, in 2025, we have thousands and thousands and thousands of toxic synthetical chemicals in our foods. And here's what this little loophole is all about. So as a producer, you can self-certify. You don't have to go through some third-party certification. You can hire your own expert, and if you pay this expert enough and he says, yeah, I think this is safe, then you can start using that chemical. And get this, you're not even required to notify the FDA. You don't have to tell them a thing. You just have to hire this expert and they say it's safe, and now you start producing. And as a result of this loophole, there are now thousands of substances, of toxic compounds that have not gone through proper testing. And I've done many videos in the past where I point out how these toxic substances are banned in most countries and yet we continue to use them. And these are things like BHA, BHT, which is a synthetic antioxidant. We have titanium dioxide, which is a whitening agent. We have a preservative called propyl gallate, and we have flavor enhancers and emulsifiers by the hundreds. And these are all toxins that have been let into the system by this GRAS loophole, and that I have pointed out in my videos and that are banned in most countries. So Kennedy says that this loophole puts the public's health at risk and it erodes consumer trust. So he proposes that all new compounds should have mandatory FDA notification. You have to tell the FDA, and you have to have third-party testing and a review of all GRAS determinations. He says this should especially pertain to novel and synthetic compounds, and if there's any known risks or issues with them. So if they're linked to cancer, ADHD, dysbiosis, or something like that. And that on all products, there should be full transparency and third-party testing, and that you should not be able to pay for your own experts. Item number 8 is raw milk, which he is in favor of. So he says that it is nutrient rich, it is closer to nature, and it offers immune benefits. So basically, when you get raw milk, it has all the enzymes that you need to break it down. It has certain bacteria that support your gut function and your immune system, and therefore it's much closer to nature. Most people who have problems digesting dairy is because the dairy is pasteurized. And of course, all the species who drink mother's milk is to feed their babies, and of course, that milk is never pasteurized. So when we pasteurize it, when we heat it, we change it. It's not the same thing anymore. And Kennedy says that the current restrictions on raw milk is a form of government overreach. He says that we should allow sales of milk across state lines, and we should not just allow it for pets. We should sell it to the end consumer, humans, including humans, and we should protect local farmers who provide this product. Food number 9, he wants to stop sugary cereals and yogurt. So a few examples would be kids yogurt such as Go-Gurt, or flavored yogurt such as Yoplait strawberry banana, kids cereals such as Trix and Fruit Loops. And he says that he's very opposed to these being marketed as health products, as health foods, when in fact they often have more sugar than desserts, and they're just full of chemicals and artificial colors and flavors. And therefore, he suggests that we should not offer these in schools and in government-funded programs. So again, if we pay for it as taxpayers, it should not make people sick. And the 10th thing he wants to shut down or restrict is processed meats. So things like hot dogs, sausage, pepperoni, deli meats, and bacon. And the reason is that they have sodium nitrite or sodium nitrate in them, which is a synthetic preservative. And the problem here is that this synthetic preservative can turn into a carcinogen, a known carcinogen called nitrosamine, when exposed to acid or high heat. So we could get some of these harmful effects from stomach acid, but the much bigger effect would be when we expose it to high heat. So if we grill hot dogs, if we cook sausage, if we fry bacon, or throw pepperoni on the pizza, now it's exposed to very high temperatures and it can turn into these nitrosamines. And while I completely agree with Kennedy on this item, that there are tons of different deli meat products, processed meat products that are full of chemicals and full of junk, I do want to point out that it doesn't have to be that way. That there are companies that make deli meats without these things, that source the meats very naturally, that have organic and grass-fed products. And also, sometimes they include natural nitrites, and natural nitrites do not react the same way on the grill. And in addition to the sodium nitrite, these products very often have other chemicals and preservatives and additives as well. So Kennedy wants to stop these products in government-funded programs like schools and the SNAP, while the critics suggest that in doing that, he would be overstepping personal choice. And again, Kennedy suggests that tax money should not be promoting disease. And I would really want to question when you're talking about personal choices of 5-year-olds up to 18-year-olds. These are the ages where they eat school lunches. What sort of personal choices do they have about food? What do they know about food? Is it even on the agenda? It's like, how interested are kids in health and the healthfulness of food? Well, I'll answer it one way. So on my channel, the percentages of viewers that I have between ages 13 and 17 is 0.1%. 1 in 1,000 viewers is in that range, basically a teenager. And below that age, below 13, it is 0. None of those kids are watching health-related movies, at least not mine, but rather the people over 45 account for 74.4% of the viewers on this channel. And what that means is that these kids' parents aren't watching either. It's the grandparents that watch, because that's when you get old enough to start getting on some medication and start doubting your immortality, and you start having some issues to look out for. So if you are a grandparent, then watch these videos and then pass on that information to your kids. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.